Attorneys regarding the intent of the city to replace portions of curb and gutter and assess property owners who are involved in the 2010 mill and overlay project. The project involves parcels adjoining Hagan Street from Crestview Drive to Hanley Road and a portion of Hanley Road between O'Keefe Road and Namacoggin Street. So let's open the public hearing. If anyone's here who would like to speak, this is your chance. Just come on up to the microphone over here and please give us your name and your address and then make your comments, please.
Hi, I'm Steve Kinney. I have my home address is what you want?
Sure.
I'm on 509 Tower Road in Troy Township, but I have a small piece of land that is on Hagan Street, starting at Crestview and going down to the comforts of home.
Okay.
And I guess I did receive your letter, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I didn't have a little sticker shock when I got it. And I am not sure how this whole process works, but I was just kind of wondering if there might be some other ways that this could happen. Mm-hmm. It's a very long and narrow stretch of land. There is a sign on the property. It is for sale currently. And to me, it would make sense to wait until someone came in and cut curb and gutters into the land where they would want it. And it just seems a little excessive for a vacant piece of land.
There will be two portions of this tonight. Let's see, the actual agenda item for discussion by the council is going to be under item 9A, special assessments for 2010 sidewalk, curb and gutter, and 9B, special assessments for curb and gutter replacements in the 2010 mill and overlay project. So during the public hearing, Steve, primarily we're going to hear from you, and then we'll discuss this and have deliberations at a later point. But I can tell you that there's a long-standing city policy that both at the time of initial installation and if they ever need to be repaired, that the adjacent property owner pays 50% of the cost of the curb and gutter. And then there's a schedule for spreading that out, which you probably got in your letter, that allows you to make the payments over some years. It is possible, if there are special circumstances, for you to make the council aware of them as you just did, and that may be taken into consideration at the time that we do deliberations, but you're going to have to wait for that part.
When would that be?
That will be later on tonight during the meeting.
Oh.
And if there's more comments that you want to make at that time, you may have an opportunity to do it again then.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Come on up. This is for the public hearing for the 2010 mill and overlay and special assessments associated with that. If you're here for that hearing, this is your chance to come up and be heard. Is there anyone else? Come on up.
Good evening. Pat Gonda, 800 Spruce Drive. Just curious on the life history of the curb and gutters. We've been there for 12 years. I believe Jacobson's Woods has been around about 15 years, and I was curious, it seems like that cement has broken down very quickly. I lived in White Bear for 25, and we never had any problems with the curbs and gutters of 25 years. I built home there also. I was just curious, it just seems like 12 years seems kind of early for that to break down so significantly as it has. I was just curious if there was a problem with the type of cement used, or could it be possibly a little bit of problems with the snow plows in the wintertime? I don't know. Those guys have a tough job, obviously. But it just seems to me the life history of cement should be a little more than 12, 13, 14 years to me. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, so there's two hearings that are happening back to back, and it's fine that you made your comment there, but let's let the record show that his comment was in the other hearing, which is going to start as soon as we close this one.
Move
It's
to
fine.
close.
There's a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, let's open the public hearing on the 2010 sidewalk curb and gutter replacement program. This is for the purpose of hearing persons interested in or their agents or attorneys regarding the intent of the city to replace portions of sidewalks and/or curb and gutter and assess the property owners abutting the following streets: Spruce Drive, 704, 908, 804, Stagg Circle, 1712, 1708, 1704. Do I have to read all this? That's a long list.
Yeah, that's stated in the notice.
How about we just dispense with the reading and say as stated in the notice? Okay, so anyone here, and sir, you already made your comments, so we've got that. Is there anyone else who wanted to comment in regards to their sidewalk assessment proposed or their curb and gutter in front of their home?
Move to close.
There's a motion to close the hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, that hearing is closed. Next, we have a public hearing on what? Oh, did I do it, or I did it out of order, but it's fine. The taxi cab service application of American Safe and Sober Transit Service was supposed to start at 6:50, so I think we're still good. Yes, sir.
I am Nathan Gramley. I live at 508 Pinewood Street in Amory, Wisconsin. I am the owner of American Safe and Sober Transit Services.
All right, do you have any comments for us?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. Then unless there's anyone else from the public, when we get to the discussion of that item, we can ask you any questions or ask for further testimony then. Any members of the public that are here that want to object or comment or make any kind of discussion about the application for his taxi cab license? If not, then we'd be ready to close that hearing too.
So moved.
There's a motion to close the hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, that hearing's closed too. Okay, now we did all three of those, and we've got a 2-minute break here again before our 7 o'clock meeting starts.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we've got Mr. Willie Subbing taking the minutes tonight, and so will you call the roll, please?
First District, Randy Morissette.
Yes,
Second
here.
District, Mary Yacoub.
Here.
Third District, Lori Bernard. Fourth District, Lee Wyland.
Here.
Fifth District, Scott O'Malley.
Here.
Sixth District, Alan Burchell.
Here.
All right, thank you. At this time, we take comments and suggestions from citizens present. If there's anyone here who would like to address the council tonight on any item that's not on tonight's agenda, but that might have an impact on the city of Hudson or come before the council at a future meeting, this is your chance. You can come on up and be heard. We've got Kim Heineman here representing the Hudson Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Bureau, and Kim would like to give us a quarterly update.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. I just wanted to let you know that this has been a really great summer in Hudson. Not too long ago, Randy from the Star Observer reported on a full-page article about how tourism was going well and had interviews from several different business owners in the community. And today is also one of those kind of days because whether it's good or bad or not, I got interviewed by KSTP today, so I was on TV a little while ago talking about the Nina and the Pinta and what that did for economic impact in Hudson. That did bring 15,000 people that paid to go on those two boats, and the feedback that we received today from many of our businesses downtown was that it was fabulous and it was a great event. So I wanted to report that. The other thing I wanted to report to you is that in July, for the first time ever, the Chamber's website hit 1 million hits in 1 month. Normally we're between the 600,000 and 800,000. July was 1,137 hits, and I bet you this month coming up will be about the same between the North Hudson Pepper Festival and the boats. We received thousands and thousands of phone calls in our office. The other thing I wanted to do is update you on a couple of upcoming programs and events that, of course, you're all invited to. On Wednesday this week is our Good Morning Hudson program where we meet our new teachers. That event we've been doing for many, many years. It's a sellout this year. There's 100 people coming from the community and from the chamber. We have many different sponsors from the business community, and we look forward to that. That is Wednesday at the Phipps Center for the Arts. Also, just a reminder, we'll be here again, but just to remind you and the general public that the Spirit of the St. Croix Art Festival is coming up September 25th and 26th, and that's shaping up very nicely. We're working in partnership with the Phipps Center for the Arts to bring that Juried Art Festival. There'll be some acoustic music, some food, and a lot of fun, hopefully good weather. The last thing I wanted to share was that I am working on getting together the Tourism Grant Committee that was established last year, so we'll be working on that, getting together to discuss that initiative for this year. And the last thing is I did bring the first quarter updates on room tax spending for you all, and I'll give these to Al to pass around for you to review at a later date. So thank you very much for all you do.
All right, thank you, Kim. Is there anyone else here who would like to address the council tonight on any item not on tonight's agenda? Okay. We will move on to our consent agenda items. Could you read those, please?
To approve the regular meeting minutes of August 2nd, 2010. To approve claims for payment with a detailed list available in the clerk's office. To approve regular operators licenses for the period of August 17th, 2010 to June 30th, 2012 to David Craig, Anna Johansson, and Sheila Utek. To approve the issuance of a taxicab service license to American Safe and Sober Transit Service, Nathan Gramley, contingent on an additional driver's license becoming licensed as taxicab driver in the city of Hudson. To approve proceeding with sidewalk repairs to the Walnut Street Bridge in the amount of $1,414.30 to be funded by the 2010 Capital Projects Interim Financing. to approve the quote from In Motion for roof repairs to the East City Garage in the amount of $4,000 to be funded by the 2010 Capital Projects Interim Financing. To approve bonus through proceeding with the inspection and report for the Walnut Street Bridge at a cost of $5,000 to be funded by the 2010 Capital Projects Interim Financing. To approve the proposal from Sign Me Up for the 4.5-inch signs in the amount of up to $59 per sign for up to 18 signs, with the 4-inch individual signs to return to staff for further clarification. To approve awarding the city fuel contract for September 1st, 2010 through August 31st, 2011 to Yoakum Oil Company. To approve accepting a quote from First American Bank for $411,000 at 2%, and to authorize the city administrator, interim treasurer, city attorney, and Ellers and Associates to proceed with finalizing the 2010 short-term financing. To approve removing the parking space on the north side of Vine Street just west of the parking lot entrance at 700 First Street. To approve restricting parking on the south side of the 1800 block of Hanley Road between O'Keefe Road and Industrial Street from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. for the Rally in the Valley Car Show and Book Sale on August 22nd. To approve the request of Amber Erickson to barricade 7th Street between Orange and Myrtle Street for a block party on September 25th, 2010 from 4 to 9 p.m. To approve no parking on the west side of River Ridge Road from Montcroy to Mayo Road.
Will you pull that one? That is incorrectly stated.
And to place on file the annual report of the assessor.
Move for approval.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote?
Morissette?
Yes.
Yakub?
Yes.
Bernard? Wyland?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Virgil?
Yes.
All right, the consent agenda is approved. And we move on to Plan Commission, item number 1, conditional use permit for a land division subdivision in the Lower St. Croix Scenic Riverway, 700 First Street and 101 Vine Street and 701 Second Street. The city of Hudson is the applicant. Denny Darnold is here to tell you about it.
The Plan Commission recommends approval of the conditional use permit for the land division or subdivision. Approval land division requested by the City of Hudson with the condition that a variance is approved to allow the rear yard setback be reduced from 25 feet to 7 feet. And the Plan Commission finds the following 9 required findings. Do you want me to elaborate those, or can I pass on those?
Refer to them.
So if you've read your issue sheet, you know what those 9 items are. Those are required findings to be found by the Plan Commission and in a recommendation to the Common Council. The variance was reviewed by the Board of Appeals last Wednesday and was approved to reduce the rear yard setback on the lot to 7 feet. So that condition of the conditional use permit has been met. I recommend approval of the land division with per the committee recommendation.
All right, so
I guess I'm maybe go back and at least I assume everybody knows where this location is. This is our 701 Second Street building. I maybe felt that was self-explanatory, but for the public, this is a land division dividing the city parcel where the 700 First Street building, which is a library, police department, and the 701 Second Street building into 2 parcels so that the city can sell the land and the building at 701 Second Street. That's the general intent of getting this conditional use permit.
Move for approval of the conditional use permit.
Second.
there's a motion and second by Wyland to approve the conditional use permit. Any discussion? This is a requirement because it's in the St. Croix Scenic Riverway District. We don't normally have to go through a conditional use permit process for this. There are some additional criteria that are listed on the issue sheet that have been considered, and we feel that there are no adverse impacts. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion's approved. Conditional use permit's approved. All right. Next is item number 2, the certified survey map creating 2 commercial lots in the B3 Central Business District, City of Hudson.
This is the actual survey, recorded survey, creating the 2 lots. Again, the lot at 700 First Street and 101 Vine Street for the Library Police Department. The second lot will be the easterly lot that abuts on 2nd Street at 701 2nd Street. Again, establishes the lot line between those 2 buildings 5 feet east of the parking lot. The intention there is the parking lot will remain intact with the 700 First Street 101 Vine Street building. The city is through a negotiated agreement of the prospective buyer to have 3 off-street parking places in the parking lot. Again, city staff recommends approval, and the Planning Commission approves the proposed 2-lot certified survey and recommends the Common Council approval of the proposed certified survey with the condition the variance is granted, permitting the rear yard setback to be reduced from 25 to 7 feet. Again, that variance was approved by the Board of Appeals last Wednesday evening.
Move for approval.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve the CSM. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The certified survey map to create the 2 lots is approved. All right, next we move on to Finance Committee. And we've got number 4, to consider proceeding to fill a vacancy in the 2nd floor receptionist / account clerk position. The committee recommendation is to fill the position with the stipulation that this position would have cross-training to also begin to do some voucher entry that would help take some pressure off the other accounting clerks. And Denny's here. His issue sheet is thorough on this. There were 4 different alternatives considered, and this you could consider maybe a 5th.
Right, and there was also this, technically a 6th one to combining the 2nd floor with the court clerk, so there were a number of different options provided to the staff.
So you're filling the receptionist 2 and downgrading it by 1 per union as full-time?
Correct.
Okay.
We will redo the job description. We will reclassify it as a
Reception.
clerk 1, and we will include the cross-training on the vouchers and utility billing as part of the job description.
I'll move for approval.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, motion's approved.
Thank you.
Number 11, consider proposals for 2011 and 2012 assessment services to the city. Denny?
I believe most of you heard the discussion during the Finance Committee. I'm certainly willing to answer any questions. Really, the Finance Committee recommendation was to retain accurate appraisal for the 2011 revaluation and 2012 maintenance contracts. And that would be under the option B, which utilizes the city assessment technician, who is Liz Moline.
At the Finance Committee, we heard testimony from Mr. Darnold and Mr. Willie that the staff actually were more comfortable sticking with Volmar, who has worked with the city for years. Although there's an awareness that there's a significant difference in the proposal cost. For this coming budget, going with Accurate would save us about $17,000, and next year another $10,000. So it's a total of about $27,000 between the two bids in the 2 years. There were multiple reference checks done on Accurate appraisal. Trying to be as objective as possible, we felt like we had investigated them thoroughly and no red flags came up. It still leaves a feeling of unease for those that have worked with Bomar, and we know the quality of their work. So there's nothing here that is a reflection that we have any concern that Bomar doesn't do quality work. They do, but there's a very significant difference in the cost. It's almost a 25% difference in $27,000. And so ultimately the Finance Committee recommends that we should go with Accurate appraisal.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'll just say I appreciate the fairness with which the information was presented, and I know it's not a small change that everyone's going to be making, and we just trust that it's going to be a good decision for the city and for everyone involved, but not minimizing the difficulty of the change.
Could I address that for just a second? And I echo your sentiments. I know it's difficult after years of working in an element of trust with Bomar to change, but I noted that Accurate had a long and good history with its clients. We've had a long and good history with Bomar. It's just that Accurate had their history with someone else, that's all, instead of us. Now is their chance to start a history with us. I think that's an ultimately fair decision.
Any other comments?
I guess I'm for cost-wise, obviously, we need to make a smarter decision here, but I feel like we need to also listen to the fact you guys feel more comfortable working with Bomar. And I just want to appreciate the fact that you guys expressed that to us. And I don't think we're taking this lightly, but as you well know, the budget in this next year is going to be extremely tight.
Just my comment is that for years, Mike Wallace and Liz Moline worked with Bomar. I really became more associated with the assessment during the last 2 years when it was apparent that Mike was going to retire, and I had to become more involved in the overall assessment program. I've been very impressed with Bomar. They've always come with recommendations, suggestions, because they know our community so well. And this is not easy solve for Ms. Moline and I, but I think we have the reputation that we will work with whoever the assessment appraisal company is, and we'll do the best job we possibly can for the city of Hudson.
I have a question.
Yes.
I know it's an open bid process and everything, and I think $27,000 is a significant difference. However, is there a possibility that we could see if Bomar would match this or come close? Is it even allowed?
One answer to that question is that we're not bidding here because we're required by state law to bid. We're not bidding because we're required by a city policy to bid, because we really exempted professional services from the general direction that we took in our procurement policy 2 years ago. We adopted a policy that we would really bid, or at least take competing quotes on almost everything. And we haven't done it on professional services, but later on tonight we're going to talk about whether we should do this periodically with engineering, which is one of our large expenses each year. We haven't done it for example, our attorney services from the city attorney. We exempted that in our own policy. So we're not doing it because someone else is making us do it, and there would be room to negotiate. But I think part of the thing that happens here is you get people to sharpen their pencil. If you put out a good comprehensive set of specs, do it as fairly and honestly and objectively as you can, And, you know, every time that you ask someone like Accurate to come and spend the time and travel time to come and interview and go through the whole process, and then they're significantly low, and instead of going with them, you go back and negotiate with your old provider, what you're doing is wasting someone's time, and pretty soon you won't get anyone to bid. Because would you bid again if you knew that we had 30 years experience with someone, and the last 2 times we've done this, we have just simply ignored then the bid process and gone with the other one through negotiation. So that's my 2 bits. Others could chime in on that, but that's what I think is really the fairest.
No, I get it. I was just curious just because of what Denny was saying, but I get it. Just curious.
It's not an easy thing, and there are probably few government services that we choose that will have as direct relation or interaction with the public in as emotional a place as their property assessments. There's potential for this to blow up on you or us. For example, you know, I watched City of New Richmond go through a reassessment, full reassessment a year ago, and there's plenty of unhappy people. You know where you want your assessment to be, right? As low as possible. If it's not, you have one person that's in your crosshairs, and it's the assessment firm. And so, you know, here's one where I would never do this to save $2,000, but this is $27,000 different. It's 25% difference. It's pretty significant.
I had one question, if I may. Yes. Bomar said that they would establish office hours from 9 to noon, 26 days in 2011, 16 days in 2012. We didn't require anything like that in the
no, not specifically. And what, if I recall, Accurate's that when they are in town, that they will have office hours. They will have a phone line where they can be communicated with. They will have information online that the public can review. This maybe not be as detailed as some information, but Accurate prides themselves on public access, and dealing with the public is one of their selling points they made to the city of Hudson.
Yeah, but you say that, Denny, and under the cons on your sheet, they didn't even make the visit here. They didn't request records.
Yeah, no. I mean, that was my concern, is that, well, I mean, we're talking about 2 different things. We're talking about dealing with the public. And when we talked, when I called the references, the communities were very happy, the job that they did, and they're dealing with the public. My comment, part of the reason I had that little bit of a discomfort level with Accurate is it wasn't apparent to me that they had called. I mean, when they called me 3 days before the proposal was due, it wasn't apparent when we went through the interview that the things that we asked them questions about should have been pretty apparent. The marina, the fact that we didn't have information online.
Well, that's what I question is, if you're saying they pride themselves on customer service, they should be delving into our books and looking and seeing and getting to know our citizens.
Well, I think the intent is once they have the contract, they will do that.
But we've already established that with Bomar.
I appreciate your comment.
I think both of the proposers had added extras in there that weren't required. I think there was one about online scheduling of open book appointments by the one, which would save us staff time if a lot of that could be handled automatically online instead of calling into a receptionist here to get an appointment. But that wasn't a requirement in the bids, but Accurate offered that and Bomar didn't. So there's some little things like that, and there probably always will be when you ask for proposals. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. How much for the first year from each, and how much for the second year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The first year, the difference is about $17,000. Accurate is 49.5 for the first year, and Bomar, I don't have my sheet in front of me. What is it?
67.
67. And then the second year, you tell them, Lori, I can't find it.
The second year, Bomar is 34,000 and Accurate is 24,500.
But basically $10,000 difference second year. All right, any other discussion, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Motion passed 5-1. Let's go on to update on projects, unfinished business. Oh, wait a minute, I got one more. Number 4, under the Public Safety Committee, reconsider parking restriction on River Ridge Road.
I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Mayor, that we are recommending not to sign that west side, or that east side, and the way it was written in the, we're just reversing the Public Safety's original motion. It says to approve no parking on the west side. That is already there. It has been there as in past.
Correct.
West side only, yeah.
West side only.
What? Yeah, this is, the note here says west side only, which is correct.
All right, so just to review, here's the map that's on everybody's table.
Yep.
River Ridge Road is a road that runs more or less north and south, paralleling the river. There are single-family homes along the river side of the road, which is the west side. There's been no parking along the west side of the road for years. The east side of the road has had parking allowed for years. It has some multifamily, and it has a there's a park down on the one end. Over the last few months, the Public Safety Committee has discussed this. They were asked by some residents there to make it no parking along the east side as well as the west side. And that motion came to the council and was approved. And so signs were installed along the east side to make no parking. Upon some complaints by the residents in the area, the committee discussed it again and decided that those signs should be removed. They have now been removed. And so the question for the council is, our last action when we approved this was to make no parking along both the west side and the east side. That's what you have approved. That's what stands right now as the official action of the city council.
So we're moving to reconsider.
So there's a motion to reconsider that. And what was in the motion, what was on consent tonight was to make no parking along only the west side, which is again the way it's been for years. If you want that, you would vote yes on the, or we need a motion probably.
So moved.
So moved. And is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion?
Now, one of the things that we had a long discussion at Public Safety because we made a decision here based on the information available at the time. Testimony from the fire department, testimony from other things. So we had a long discussion about why would we change our mind because we've already had this discussion. Tom brought forward that there has been work done along that road by both the city and the residents. Part of what the issue was encroachment. Encroachment on the street itself made people parking more farther and farther into the roadway. So we said the only way we can reconsider this is if something has changed. Well, since then, I think Tom can talk about the changes that have been made along that road to make it more passable. If I can ask Tom to talk to that. Because this was the foundation of why would we change our mind. Is there new information to consider?
Well, during the earlier committee discussion on this, there was testimony from Tom and maybe someone from fire or EMS talking about some difficulty potentially getting trucks through there.
Both police and EMS
Both police.
have.
And that was the
Sounds
basis
okay.
for recommending no parking both sides.
Correct.
But something has changed.
Since then, we've contacted many of the property owners and asked them to clear the road ditch, and according to our city code, that the adjacent property owners should maintain up to the roadway. And many of them have cleared trees and brush and branches and grass, and it's really opened the whole road up. So it's helped that situation quite a bit.
So that's taken place on the west side of River Ridge,
Both sides.
both sides. I thought the park was on the east side. Okay, so I'm just wondering where this clearing took place.
Or down toward the south end.
South end.
Okay.
So that's the reason we reconsidered it. We looked at the changes in the roadway. The issues the reasons we put up the signs have now been changed. So we felt it was reasonable to bring it back and to rediscuss it.
Okay, any other discussion?
So when the brush grows back, are we gonna make it no parking again? I mean, I say that somewhat facetiously, but, you know, so all this change has taken place since the signs went up
The signs went up. and
earlier
then
in the spring, right?
Correct. The signs went up, and then the residents we had different residents come by and say, this has never been a problem, why is it a problem now? So additional investigation was done. I think to answer your question, the residents now, I believe, maybe didn't know before that it's their responsibility to keep that area clear. Now, it's them that it directly impacts too, because they're the ones that are parking there. So they're saying, well, okay, if we do a better job of keeping our street clear, it'll be safe for everybody.
And all that's happened in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Yes, it has.
Well, it's been about 2 months. This was first went to committee back in April, I think.
Can I just make one comment?
Yes.
I guess my comment would be this, that sometimes I think there can be a tendency to put signs up too quickly. And maybe if that question had been asked, why is this a problem now, whereas it hasn't been a problem in the past? If that question had been asked before the signs were put up, clearing could have taken place and we wouldn't have gone through this futile exercise in putting the sign up and taking it down. So it's just my own observation.
Do we have the fire department saying it's okay now?
We have EMS and fire, Lieutenant Larson that says it's fine.
What about the fire department?
He was not at those 2 meetings.
Have you talked to him? Anybody talked to him?
No.
Well, it's a 60-foot road. We've got plenty of 60-foot roads, right, Tom? Isn't it not a 60-foot road? That's what it says on the map.
It's a 60-foot right of way.
All right, so is it narrower than our typical cross-section still?
Very much.
So that's the issue?
Yeah. It's a path.
Our roadway was built as a private roadway and was accepted by the city of Hudson under the conditions, with the possibility at some point in the future, if sanitary sewer was extended to that area, the road would be torn up possibly and then the road rebuilt. But basically, it's pretty much a 2-lane road.
All right. Okay, so the committee is recommending parking at this point only to be allowed on the east side and no parking on the west side. We have a motion and a second. We've had discussion. Question's been called. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passes. Let's go then to update on projects. Mr. Schwartz.
Good evening, Council. I'd like to start off with the 2009 street improvement project, and those repairs to the Beaneman Farm neighborhood have been completed, the fog seal with the coal slag, and I don't know if anybody's had an opportunity to look at it. I should mention there wasn't a written one in your, I was gone all last week, so if you're looking around for a written copy, there is no a written update. So the 2009 improvements, you know, they have been repaired, and I've been up there. It looks, in our opinion, really good. And I don't want to speak for Tom, but I think he'll agree that that repair was successful. And so I don't know if there's any other questions regarding that project.
Any other questions on that fix-it job? Let's say we're happy for now.
Then moving along to the 2010 street improvement, that pre-construction meeting hasn't been set yet. That's Tom's project, but we will be assisting him wherever he feels it's appropriate. And same goes with the mill and overlay project as well. Okay. And I believe that one is that they're looking at tentatively starting that one after Labor Day.
Tom, is that right? You want to step in and give any update on those 2010 projects?
The mill and overlay project, I have Hagan Street should start after Labor Day, hopefully, and we're expecting to be completed by October 1st. Bear Drive is another project that we started. That was working with St. Croix County. That is completed with the exception of the shouldering on the east side and the painting. Excuse me. The sidewalk program will start as soon as we get this hearings taken care of and contract signed.
Okay, thanks. All right, anything else, Chuck?
No, we've put together work orders for some corrective measures on Goodwill on that project there, particularly on 17th. I don't know if you have any specific questions for me at this time regarding
anyone.
Private
Alan,
projects.
you got a question?
Just, I don't know if it's appropriate, I'd like to ask our engineer how long curb and gutter should last. Would it be appropriate now or wait until the public?
Absolutely.
I'd be happy to answer that.
Yeah.
I would hope 50 to 75 years is, the kind of the life expectancy we'd like to see out of curb and gutter.
So if you have a project that's 10 years old or 12 years old and you've got the deterioration of curb, that needs to be replaced, what would be an explanation or why would that happen?
It could have been bad concrete, sometimes chemical if you don't have proper drainage. They may have overworked the concrete during installation. When you expect that life, you don't expect the entire section to last that 50 to 75 years, just more or less the majority of it. A lot of it's a function of the material underneath it as well. So it's materials and installation, and then what's driving over it too. City policy, Ben, since I've been here, what I understand it to be too is, when you replace curb and gutter during these mill and overlay projects as necessary. And generally speaking, when you start hitting that 40 to 50% removal, and that's when you would seriously consider just replacing it all.
Okay. When we spec concrete, is there different grades of concrete?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. I think we typically spec a certain design of concrete that's 4,000 psi, and it's common to take cylinders at the time, through the construction to get representative samples and to break them and to make sure that you're getting that quality of concrete that you're speccing.
If we've always used the same quality of concrete in the last 10 years?
That I can't answer, and going back, I could look if you'd like me to, because I've noticed that throughout town and in several areas where it appears to me that there's concrete that's maybe prematurely.
Absolutely. If I would jump in, I think if it fails in less than 3 years, I believe we go back after the contractor under kind of a warranty issue thing, if I'm not mistaken. Don't let me put words in your mouth, but how many years? Two.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just to point out one, if you take practically the entire stretch of Grandview as it goes through Stone Pine, that started failing at about the 5 to 7 year mark. That's been in there now for how many years has it been there? Probably around
10 to 12, because we've
about 12. That's about 12 years old. It was installed late in the season, which is another reason as we go forward on these projects and we get into October, and yes, you can still do it, but I think that was installed pretty late, if I'm not mistaken. But just drive along there one day. I mean, when we come time to do mill and overlay, we're going to have curb replacement all up and down Grandview, and it's a very similar example to what's gone on in some other places. I think you were alluding to that we've got some other places in the relatively recent past. I think there was a period there in the 90s when we installed a lot of curb that I don't think is lasting the way it should. And I don't know what we can do to get better work product and hold them, you know, as we count on you to watch out for us in the bidding and in the installation. But, you know, you don't find out about it until it's 8 and 10 years later, but you expect it to last 50 years and it only lasts 10. Nobody's happy.
Well, if we're specing a 2-year product and hoping it'll last 50 years, maybe we have to be specing a 10-year guarantee, not a 2-year guarantee.
No, and if my recollection is correct, you know, what we're speccing is over and above what the DOT requires as far as the quality of concrete. But I have driven around actually with my field inspector, and we've talked about this, and what could potentially be going along here, whether or not we should bring in some sort of testing agency, whether it was a period of bad concrete or what was going on. I also know, and I would be curious, and I'll go look through our files like on that project, but there was a period of time too where I don't know if we necessarily inspected all the projects we designed. Some of that may have been handled in-house, and so whether or not we have records of whether or not that testing was being done on some of those roads too is something that I've been a little bit curious about as well.
Well, and that's, I appreciate the fact that you're kind of making that point. Let's just elaborate on it, because you also alluded earlier to the fact that our mill and overlay project this year is essentially an in-house project versus your project, meaning that Tom's handling it. So then, you're available on an hourly basis, I take it, for him to ask you to do inspection services?
Yeah, and primarily it would be Sandy Schmidt, my field inspector.
Yeah,
and
but
she was,
when I say you, I mean your firm.
Yes, that's correct. And, and she would, presumably, she has been in the past as far as working closely with Tom and coordinating some of those cylinder takings and the like when they're needed.
So if you did testing all the way along, we should be able to go back to some of these areas at least and pull your test results and compare them to those that are still holding up versus those that are breaking down. We'll be able to tell something different? Well,
it's difficult because what you're doing is you're taking a cylinder sample that they're bringing back to a shop and they're breaking it. Where if during the installation they're overworking it, finishing it off and they overwork it, then, that kind of brings all the fines to the top, and it, so it could be an installation thing. So those cylinders may not tell you that, there will or was or will not be a problem. It just gives you the quality of the concrete, but maybe not the workmanship that actually went into it, finishing it.
So you're saying the cylinders are poured when the concrete is poured, and you take them back, you harden them, and then bust them up and see what the quality was?
Yeah, that's correct.
It's not actually the installed product you're taking a copy of?
No.
But in any case, you still should be able to tell the general quality of the concrete at the time it was installed.
Yeah, if there was something wrong with it, or if it was, the strength was there. So if you'd like, I'll certainly dig into Hagen specific.
I'd like you to talk in committee a little bit more about
sure.
that, and why don't you bring that up as a discussion item,
Okay.
see if there's something we should do
If you could pull
differently.
Jacobs Woods, if you guys remember that one, pull that one, take a look at it, if you would, for me. We meet on the 31st of August.
Thank you.
And then Grandview, going through Stone Pine. I mean, it seems to be in the newer parts of town, not to overgeneralize, but.
Okay, any other questions for Chuck? Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
All right. Since we've got folks waiting, and I probably could have done this before, but let me offer now. Before we take up the odd-even parking proposal, should we go ahead and skip ahead to new business? Sure. What do you say?
I think so.
Let's postpone 7B and go on to 9A, special assessments for the 2010 sidewalk curb and gutter replacement project. Final resolution 15-10. So what we've got then is a preliminary assessment roll that's on a spreadsheet. At the hearing on this We heard about curb in Jacobson's Woods, which was built only about, I think it was, 12, 13 years ago. I can tell you that as to the when do we do pavement work, we do use the Whistler program for that. That is a objective and standardized program for deciding whose street gets the attention when. And I took phone calls as early as 2 years ago from Jacobson's Woods residents and homeowners complaining that the street surface was worse than streets that we were repairing. Now I'm talking street surface. And ultimately Jacobson's Woods came to the top of the list this year, and so it's scheduled for some improvement. Once the pavement comes to the top of the list, then there will be a review of, well, what about the curb and gutter? Because we're not going to redo the pavement and leave bad, failed curb and gutter there. The purpose of the curb and gutter is to work in conjunction with the paving surface to keep water from undercutting and doing damage to the subsoils below the roadway. And so here we are. I mean, it's come to the top of the list to do some work in that area at some point. What are we up for here, Tom? Is this in Jacobson's? Are we doing any street surface, or are these curbs just failed to the point that they need curb replacement?
In this development, we're planning on doing crack filling, some flex patching, and slurry seal, which we did in Stone Pine last year. But the curb and gutter in this area has just failed beyond. We just have to do something with this curb. It's in poor condition. If we spend this money on crack filling and the other road improvements, it's just something that we should do in this area.
Okay, so what we would need would be to suspend the rules for the, no, wait, did we have a first reading at the last meeting?
No, we did the preliminary resolution.
Preliminary resolution. So we would need to suspend the rules towards adoption of the resolution.
So moved.
There's a motion to suspend. Is there a second?
Second.
Which one are you talking about?
1510. Discussion on suspending the rules. Roll call on suspending the rules.
Yakub?
Yes.
Bernard?
Yes.
Wyland?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Burchell?
Yes.
Morissette?
Yes.
Okay, so the rules are suspended. Now you can consider adopting the resolution 15-10.
Move to adopt 15-10.
So motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Now discussion.
Do we want to hear anything else from anybody?
Would you like to say anything more on this before we vote on it?
Yes, one thing I was going to ask about is if they have like a truck with weed spray to kill the weeds that are growing in the gutters. They're getting to be 2-3 feet tall, and then that's a nice area, and it looks,
Yeah.
the roads look absolutely horrible.
Tom, you want to address that?
Yep. Let's talk about it.
Yep.
And does that, I know that happens more as you get bigger cracks and as the paving separates from the curb, which when the cracks are big enough for the weeds to grow up, it's also starting to be that you can get more and more water infiltrating down in there, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Which we don't want.
Is this weeds that you're talking about in Jacob's Woods Edition?
Yes, correct.
They were sprayed last week. They should have been sprayed by a guy. Did you see him in a four-wheeler with a tank?
I've not seen too much killing, but I did see a little.
It was actually sprayed last week. All the cracks. Everywhere we're going to do a seal coat project or a road, street improvement, we did spray the weeds along the gutter line. So hopefully you'll see some effects soon.
It just seems awful early for that to be happening process. Because some of that gravel from the curb is getting into the sewer system. You can see it. I can't believe that's something that you would want to have.
No, we don't want that, but we don't want the curb to be breaking down like it is in your neighborhood. It's just not right. All right, any other discussion? You can amend this roll if you choose to, otherwise we approve it. This is the way it's going to happen. And there are specific sections in this one. It's not the whole neighborhood, or is it, Tom? Is it the whole neighborhood? Or is this a section by section where you've marked them out?
Everything's marked, but basically it's from Vine Street north to the second cul-de-sac. I think it's Pheasant Run. This is a bad area.
Yep. Okay. And so what we have the power to not replace the curb and gutter there, but there's no possibility that we're going to not charge you after we've charged hundreds of others, and we just have to be consistent in that. So if it's getting replaced, there will be the 50% assessment. But we could take the approach, and we have occasionally in the past, of saying, maybe there's something different we can do there, but I honestly think it's so bad, and we're no more happy about it than you. I can tell you that, and we want those to last.
Make sure at least that the cement that's used is for the last 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be looking into that, because we've got a few where we see this happening prematurely, and we're not happy about it. Okay, any other discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passes. Let's take up number B, special assessments for curb and gutter replacements in the 2010 Mill and Overlay Project, final resolution number 16-10.
Motion to suspend the rules.
There's a motion to suspend. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on suspending the rules? Roll call vote.
Burchell.
Yes.
Wyland.
Yes.
Yakub.
Yes.
Morissette.
Yes.
O'Malley.
Yes.
Bernard.
All right, motion passed. The rules are suspended. Now you can consider adopting resolution 16-10.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Once again, we had a public hearing on this tonight. There's several commercial properties. Primarily, it is commercial properties on this one. We did hear from Mr. Kinney, who spoke to the fact that it's a large assessment. He has a long, narrow property, so for the acreage involved, he has quite a bit of street frontage, and hence a large bill. He also made the point that the property is for sale and presumably would be developed after sold, and that that might involve curb cuts at points potentially to be decided in the future by a potential developer. Am I paraphrasing?
Very well. The other thing I just add is I do own that property, and I've seen every inch of that several times. And there are some places where I know there could be some repairs, but I would just question whether the whole thing needs to be replaced.
Yeah. Tom, you want to speak to this since this is an in-house process, so that this curb assessment, at times we've had our city engineer do the assessment of what's going to be done, and I take it this time you did it in-house?
Yes, I did.
So can you defend that this needs to be done there?
I inspected and walked this parcel from Crestview to the lot line at Comforts of Homes several times, and to be consistent with the other projects that we've done in the past several years, speaking like 11th Street South, Crestview, Carmichael, Cooley Road. The curb in this area is consistent that we've replaced in other projects. There was a few areas in the middle sections there that it was a section probably 80 or 90 feet that was good concrete. We left that not to be replaced, and the other areas are just failing. Seems like wherever there's a expansion joint, some are up to a foot wide and several inches deep. So I just felt to be consistent that this curb and gutter should be replaced.
Do you recall what year this curb was installed? I'm trying to remember when the we took out the ball field and we put that road through there, and then the post office came later. Who remembers when that was? It was mid-90s, I think, wasn't it?
95 or something.
95? I just think it was a tough year for concrete. I've got private sidewalk on one of our properties that was installed in '95, and we had to replace some of it 5 years ago, and there's more of it now, and we've been just very unhappy with, I don't know what it was in there, but it's frustrating.
I've talked to concrete, like representatives from Semstone and County Concrete, and they say it's not the concrete, they say it's the finisher, and you talk to the finishers, you know, the installers, and they say, no, it's the concrete, so it's a tough deal, and I certainly understand some of their concerns, but I feel that if we can follow our inspections and the city specifications, that we can hopefully get a better product.
You know, Tom, I drove up there and looked quite a bit. Al, you're up there all the time, but I'm kind of, I don't see as much damage.
I'll be glad to show you.
I mean,
it's wherever the weeds are growing.
Well, that's everywhere up there.
But they're all coming from the cracks and the bad concrete.
Al,
Have we ever, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm asking you, have you seen it? You're up there all the time.
I wouldn't be qualified to make a determination whether or not the concrete is good or bad. I mean, I'm not in that business, and I wouldn't be qualified to make that determination. But my question is, have we ever extended the time period to pay other than the 3 years? We've used the 1, 2, and 3 based on the value. Have we ever considered on a higher assessment like this?
We have a special assessment policy that was adopted and has been re-adopted, and in there, I believe it specifies that would be subject to council action. But I don't think it's on the agenda for tonight, so I don't think you'll be able to do it tonight.
Well, you wouldn't change the policy. He's talking about
Make an exception to the policy?
Well, adjusting the assessment on the.
He's talking about giving him more time.
Yeah, right, I understand
I
that.
don't know that we've ever had them this big. I mean, you know, that,
Yeah, it does.
had done a street where we've had this big of a run of concrete, so I think that's why it probably hasn't come up, that I can recall.
I mean, the policy states that the payment duration,
3 years.
3 years.
Principal 500 or less 1 year, 501 to 1,000 2 years, 1,001 or greater 3 years. Is there anything in there about extending to no more than 10 annuals? Because I think
Well, there's bonds for projects funded by special assessment B bonds.
yeah, I remember we had a special assessment one time on one of my properties where I believe we got longer. It was a pretty large assessment, 10 maybe.
Right, if
Yeah,
they're
this
funded
says-
by those B bonds, then you
right,
can
because
spread them all
that-
over the length of the bonds.
This way the city's paying it out regularly.
Correct.
Yeah,
But that's only allowed in the B bond situation, up to 10.
up to 10 years.
Yeah, not greater than 10 annual installments, but I don't think
These are
there's
not
any
B bonds.
financing. Any
Just that
B bonds,
interim, no.
Right. So the city's gonna have to pay it out.
So we could finance it. Normally we do that and we don't charge interest or anything. We just let it be spread out for 3 years.
For the 3 years.
For
No,
the
there's-
3 years.
there's
Is there
interest.
interest?
Yes,
Oh,
it's a,
2%.
it's 2% above what we're borrowing for, so it'd be 4%.
4%.
So, I mean, I think you could do it up to 10 years and under those same circumstances if you chose to, but you wouldn't be following our assessment policy.
It's something to consider, because if we're looking at a few other streets you've been talking about, there's some huge assessments that are gonna happen there as well.
I agree, and I was gonna say, if we're looking at Wisconsin Street,
I didn't wanna
it
call that
might be
one out, but-
something that we, well, but I mean, we might wanna revisit that policy. The
So-
other, I
Go
guess the
ahead.
other comment is, if that parcel may be developed, I mean, and I understand what Tom was saying, it largely needs to be replaced, but I'm wondering if there might not be, could we do the worst sections, and I hate to redo the whole curb and gutter and then have it be cut into, and
I
don't
tell you
know.
what, my hesitation is on that, and I'll be the first one to say that you have to look back and say, well, maybe that wasn't the smartest thing, and try to learn from it. But you talked about remedial action at the Goodwill along 17th, and, you know, and I was in favor of it. We talked about we may be widening that and adding a turn lane, so let's not force them to put in curb there. Looking back, that seems like such a short-sighted decision. You know, and sometimes you just have to make the decision based on the fact that, hey, what's for the greater good of the public. And we can try to apply this policy fairly, but also uniformly. And, you know, we have, on larger assessments of this size, generally, we would have probably allowed 10 years, because usually, in a different year, we may have been bonding for it. But this year, we're not. So I don't know where that leaves us, but it seems like it wouldn't be completely treating someone differently than anyone else to give them longer to pay.
If we give 10 years, how are they held accountable through the tax roll?
Yeah.
Right.
And when ownership changes over, it
stays on
It's-
the parcel.
It's the parcel, so
Special assessments are paid up when the property is sold.
when the property is sold.
Yeah.
And there would be interest, the 4% would accrue every, continue to accrue every
Do we
year.
charge them that interest, or are we gonna have to?
The property
Well,
owners
we go on
charge, if they don't pay it in full this year, then they get charged interest in subsequent years until it's paid off.
In this situation where we're not actually tying it to a bond, I mean, if we create this, you're gonna have to set an interest rate.
Well, and I thought because the interim financing was that too, that's
Yeah.
kind of where I was going with the 4, because,
Well, that'd be good for the first year, but that's only a 1-year deal. And
well, that's what it's based on though, is that the interest rate at the time of the project. That's what it's based on.
But what I'm saying is, it's not like usually where we're getting a locked-in fixed 10-year. We're borrowing for the first year at 2%, and then we'll be out the money for the following years and essentially.
But what we need to set, you
bankroll.
need to set it now though, because we have
Yeah.
to get into the system.
We need to set it now, and I think if someone's gonna make a motion to do something on this, you're gonna have to make the motion along with an interest rate. Is there anything you don't think it can be done?
Well, I
should be
think,
done?
a couple of things. You're doing something that's not provided for in your policy. So that's always, you open the door to do it, there's always a unique situation coming through. You could delay this and look at your policy and try to make a provision for extending it over 10 years in situations, set some criteria. The only reason it's not 10 years is because the city isn't financing. I don't know about revisiting it after this financing ends. That's kind of hard. It's difficult to know what the interest is going to be on whatever the city does in its permanent financing next spring.
I would much prefer to see us approve the project and the construction, get it going, just for the reason that I hate to see us get into the deeper in the fall. But if there's an amendment to the special assessment policy, it seems like we could do that and make it retroactive to this year's projects, because it won't go on their tax bill until later in the year anyway.
Yeah, I'd be satisfied if you made it to look at this part of the policy and come up with something to address these unique situations.
Would that help?
I mean, we can all feel your pain, because we, as I said last time we talked about this, when you have a tree trimming or delivery or something and they want to drive that truck over the curb, you should stop and think, I got money invested in that curb, and when the special assessment comes and it's $5,000, just remember you probably had something to say about whether they did that or not, and that doesn't apply to you, but it does. So all property owners in the city should be aware that they have some definite stake in taking care of that curb. Yep, and you can say, look, well, you can try. You can try. They may be forced to do it. It's on the city right away, so that's what the right of way is for. But the unnecessary traffic over it should be avoided. All right, we've got a motion and a second to approve the roll as it is. We've had a lot of discussion. What's your pleasure here? Any amendments or any changes to it? You ready to vote?
Well, I'd like to offer the amendment that we revisit this portion of the assessment policy, in addition to approving the.
Are you
the
going to
assessment
make,
roll.
well, you have to
You'll have to
decide
change
whether
the
you're going to
resolution.
make a change to the role as it's been presented for Mr.
They-
McKinney.
No, they're just changing the interest. The length of time, which is in this resolution.
Oh,
Right.
well,
So
just
I'm not-
as it applies to the Kinney property.
There is another large one there. I don't know if it should be on a dollar amount over a certain amount. or-
Well, I'm not
Isn't that the
suggesting we
post office?
change the roll,
Oh,
but I'm suggesting that we
okay.
revisit the policy at our next
We can do that at the
Okay.
next meeting, can't
Right.
we?
Yeah, well,
Approve this?
we'd have to adjust number 7. You'd also have to go back and amend the last motion then too as well, essentially.
Well,
No,
we'd
we're not
have,
changing the,
we're not changing the roles, but we're gonna look at our assessment policy, and even though we've adopted these resolutions, we may offer these assessed properties a longer payment period if that's what comes forward in subsequent discussion.
and then you'd need to notify
We have to
any
know.
property owners that would be affected by that.
Yeah.
Just approve the resolution.
Need to approve the resolution tonight as it is. And then I'll ask that it go to the committee. Let's see, it should probably go to Finance Committee. Any reason it needs to go to Public Works? No. Bring it back to Finance next time. With that, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passed, resolution 1610 is adopted. All right, let's go back to B, 7B, consider amending municipal code regarding odd-even parking proposal, ordinance number 12-10. Comes from the...
I don't know if the gentleman for the taxi cab.
Oh, sure.
We were, that was on
That
consent.
was consent, wasn't it?
Did we do it on consent?
Yes, we did.
All right, and I'm sorry, you didn't realize that, but we approved your application way back at the beginning of the meeting. But I bet you've learned an awful lot about curb and gutter.
More than
So don't drive over the curb when you're dropping off and picking up fares, whatever you do.
Does that include picking up your elderly and handicapped?
Well, if you can avoid it unless it's absolutely necessary. All right, so if you want to stay, you can stay for this next discussion, but I didn't realize I wasn't paying attention, you were still waiting. All right, ordinance 1210 it came out of work both in Public Safety Committee, probably originally, and then a subcommittee, and most recently, the issue sheet comes from the Public Works Committee. And at the Public Works Committee, Alan, since it's coming from your committee, you want this baby?
Do I want this baby?
Okay, here we go. Committee recommendation is to implement a citywide calendar system for odd-even parking to begin at 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, beginning on November 15th through April 15th, and to assign an odd or even day for areas where house numbering is an issue, and to inform the public by posting the information on the city website, local newspapers, and water utility bills, and that schools and metered areas in the downtown business district would be exempt. The motion carries. The motion, or the ordinance that would make this happen is included in your packet as ordinance 12-10. 12-10 has been discussed in committee. I'm not sure how recently it was discussed, but this is the state of it as it came to us from the committee last.
The only thing I would add is that it's gone through Public Works and it passed 3-0. It went through Public Safety and it passed 2-1, and they made changes to it and moved the hours from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. They moved it to 7 to 4 p.m. So it's gone through both committees. It's 5 of the 6 of us passed it at the time it came to each of our committees. So that's all I would add.
Anyone else?
Are you taking that up as an item, a separate item, with the street servicing ordinance proposal?
Well,
what are you doing?
Order. All right. Included in your packet was provided by Alderperson Yakub. It is what is labeled street servicing ordinance. I'll tell you that I considered this to be not in ordinance form, but more of a proposal. I mean, it's labeled ordinance proposal, and I think that's exactly what it is. And I read it and studied it carefully. I think there are a lot of good points in there. everybody's gonna get their chance here, and I'll take my chance before I give you your chance, and then I'll give you your chance. My concerns with what came out of the committee is, while I think there's a valid concern about getting the streets plowed both quickly and cost effectively, I think there needs to be a balancing between being cost effective for the city services and the imposition and inconvenience that we put on our city residents. And I know that this has been talked about thoroughly, but honestly, I came to the point where it still felt like we're overreaching a bit, and that I was happier with the idea of, you know, when it snows, we'll call it a snow emergency, and the odd even goes into effect. Now, I guess that's essentially what's in your alternative proposal, among other things. And so, as an attempt to take your proposal and put it into ordinance form, I included in here second version, it's called, of 1210, which calls for snow emergencies defined as a snowfall of 2 inches or more. Point 2 is that there's also odd even during any declared street maintenance periods for street cleaning, tree trimming, or other maintenance. That would be during the summer, from April 15th to November 15th. I think that was your suggestion in there. So essentially, without putting words in your mouth, I sensed that you wanted to offer an alternative, and so we quickly, in about 20 minutes, drafted this up into an alternative on Friday, and here it is. We included exemptions as were listed in your proposal, as well as in the committee discussion and comments that were made by Denny Darnold. So those would include the downtown commercial area where there are meters, designated school districts, which the city attorney suggested should include those that were in the issue sheet, or your suggestion, I think, Mary, which were in a 1-block radius around Willow, St. Patrick's, and Trinity Academy. The cul-de-sac streets and other places where we have exclusively odd-even numbering would just be exempt. Streets already designated no parking on one side would be exempt. 2-hour parking zones would be exempt. Residential parking only designations, that's where we have a permit system. Maybe that isn't very clear there, but we have a permit system on some city streets where you have to have a sticker that says you live there for you to park there.
So it's resident permit.
Resident, yep. That probably could have been, maybe could be modified. And then other streets with special circumstances as designated by the council is designed to give you the room to remove other streets. If there are other parts, I did not include the enhanced fines that you have in your ordinance, where they would be $25, $50, and $75 fines plus towing, because I thought it was excessive, but that, and so there it is. Basically, I think Council President Bernard makes the point that this has been through committee twice and has been approved, but I had the sense that despite that, the longer it's been out there, the less support there's been for it. And so because your alternative came, and the first I saw it was on Friday or Thursday, I read through it on Friday morning, and we tried to draft it into something that might be ready for approval tonight. Otherwise, I suspect this is coming back a whole nother go-around. With that, anyone want to be heard on this? Scott?
We continue the process of overthinking this issue.
Yes.
And that's why it keeps going round and round and round. It seems to me there are two basic questions to be answered. One is, and this is why we keep talking about signs and et cetera, is notification. Notification to the residents of Hudson as to when the heck are we going to plow the streets. And we all kind of agree that when it's 2 inches of snow or more, that's probably when we're going to plow the streets. Well, how do we notify everyone of that? This was something I touched on in committee. I abandoned the notion because first of all, I didn't have full facts at the time, and it didn't seem to have any support. But I believe the first question of notification depends on whether or not citizens want to take some responsibility for their property. We don't have to make this odd even so that they have to constantly be moving their cars when there is no snow. I would imagine that had we had this in effect last year, during the month of March, we would have received more than some phone calls because it didn't snow at all in March. The second snowiest month of the year historically did not get a snowflake this last March. And yet people would have had to go out and move their cars from one side of the street every single day for no reason whatsoever. So I proposed at that time, and we could revisit it if you like, notification can be done in several ways. And it allows the property owner, the homeowner, the owner of the car to decide what to do. We can notify them by taking a very proactive approach. If citizens will give us their email address, we will email them saying, tomorrow night tomorrow we're gonna plow your street. We can put it up on our website saying, tomorrow here are the streets we're gonna plow. And it may be all of them, depending on the amount of snowfall and where we're at in our plowing. And we can encourage citizens to go online, recognizing not everybody in the entire world has a computer yet, maybe, and can't go online. There is a third alternative. If they don't have email, they can't go online. I checked into this just very recently. We can do robocalls. It is possible and technically feasible, and the charge, as described to me by another municipality that does this, the word they used was nominal. There are many companies out there where we provide a database to them of phone numbers. Just the phone numbers, no other information whatsoever. Here's a whole list of phone numbers in a database, and we, the city, creates the message. We simply call it in to say, we're going to plow streets tomorrow. And that call goes out to everyone, saying the city's going to plow, you're notified. I believe that takes care of the notification part of the question. Again, it all depends if you agree. Secondly, what do you do once you're notified? Do you move your car to the other side of the street? Denny Darnold very helpfully volunteered creating odd and even parts of cul-de-sacs that his department could do so that people would be notified ahead of time. We know you all have even numbers in your cul-de-sac, but for purposes of snow plowing, this side over here is odd and this side over here is even. And so when you get the call saying we're going to plow, and if it's going to be an odd day tomorrow, we'll tell you in the robocall, get to the odd side of the street or the even side of the street. Or we can, depending on if this isn't too onerous, and it certainly would make things much more efficient and save us, I believe, a lot of money in our public works department, is just tell everybody, get your car off the street tomorrow, please, and clear the alleyways, because we're going to plow them all. And we're done.
Anyone else? Discussion?
Sure. We've been talking about this since April. There's been plenty of opportunity since April for input. We've had umpteen subcommittee meetings. It's gone to Public Works twice. It's gone to Public Safety once. And lo and behold, we have another proposal tonight. And I guess that is what sort of irritates me a little bit, is that some of these ideas and more input was not brought forward earlier. So I don't know how we could possibly pass this tonight when there's been this much disagreement to this point, and now we're putting a new proposal out, and we're suddenly all supposed to jump on board. So I'm perplexed, and I'm willing to discuss it further, but I don't think it warrants problem solving tonight.
I don't believe we have a motion at this point, but I think what came from the committee is Ordinance 12-10, as is in your packet, as I think Jan labeled it first version. Mm-hmm. The reason there's a second is because I thought it makes for the best decision making if we try to have it in front of you over the weekend. So I basically tried to take your proposal and turn it into amendments. But what came from the committee and what should probably be voted on here is the committee proposal, which is for adoption of Ordinance 12-10. Now, we haven't had a first reading on it?
Yeah.
We did?
I think, or did you just send it back to committee?
No, we didn't have
Don't
first
recall.
reading.
Did we have a first reading?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
And I guess the only other thing I would add is the proposal that's in here, while it's great, it didn't even go through public safety, so it's not gone through any committee. So that part's just a little, seems out of order, but I appreciate the
Mr. Mayor,
effort to
we
get
give
something else
Ms.
on the table.
Yakub her time to
Absolutely, it's
present her
open.
proposal.
Any,
First, I went to subcommittee meetings, and I was the one no that's been the no this whole time. So I feel I've been consistent in how I feel about the first ordinance. We talked about it in public safety, about the option of this proposal that was written, was talked about in public safety last week, or 2 weeks ago. Part of the reason why I went forward with writing this up was because I asked Tom in public safety and I spoke to him on the phone, asking him which would be a more cost-effective way of clearing these streets and efficient. He spoke up and told me that this option of the proposal would be more cost-effective and efficient, and the numbers are there, as from what I understand from Tom, and that's what we put in the proposal. Part of my problem with what's currently on the table is the proposal on the table now. Granted, I didn't think of this before, but sorry, maybe I am overthinking, but I think a lot of stuff I think this is very important. I think it affects the entire city, and I think it needs to be done right. This ordinance right now, as is for Monday through Friday. If it snows on the weekend, we're going to have an issue there with parking, because cars are allowed to park on the streets, any side of the street, Saturday and Sunday. So if we have the big weekend snowstorm like we did last year, we're going to have a problem with plowing. I think too many things are exempt on this current proposal. I live on an all-even street. After thinking about it more and more, if it does go to odd-even, guess I don't get to park on the odd side when it's an odd day on a street. And I think that's, to get these streets cleared, I mean, I don't know. Cul-de-sacs, we can stack everybody up on one side of the cul-de-sac. That's going to make difficult for plowing. So we start exempting cul-de-sacs. We start exempting streets that have no parking on one side. Well, then that one side that they can park on every single day of the week, because they're never going to have to move to the other side, isn't going to be properly plowed ever. That's how I see that. Notification, I agree a lot with what Scott's saying. I also think that we live in a city where many people travel into the cities. I know my husband, the first thing he does before he travels into the city when it's snowing out, or if it's about to snow, is he looks on the Weather Channel and sees how much snow we're about to get. It's common sense that I think that you look to see how much snow is going to fall that day, and if it's projected to be that amount of snow, maybe you should think about getting your car off the road, or if we go odd even, to the proper side of the street. You know, I just think there's so many things that there's many changes that can be made. Even if we do odd even parking, it has to be, I think it has to include Saturday and Sunday. And I think that maybe if you live on a street where there's no parking on one side, then you don't get to park on that side of the street that day. I came up with these not out of the air. I called many different municipalities. That was suggestions that came to me from many different municipalities. I also talked to different municipalities about odd even versus no cars on the street, period. And it seems to be that no cars on the street, period, is not only easier for Public Works to get the job done, but most cost effective. Although an inconvenience for the residents of Hudson, the inconvenience would be only when it snows. It's not going to be 5 months out of the year. That's why when I took it to public safety to talk about it more, they suggested that we write this up, so that's what I did.
well, let me defend a little bit in that I think that the alderperson from District 2 has had possibly a minority position, but it's a minority position. And rather just come and vote no, it actually is being a good legislator to instead offer an alternative version. So, I mean, I don't think that you can say that that wasn't appropriate. And honestly, what I did as I put the agenda together was just sat down with Jan and said, let's just try to make some amendments in here to what's already there to accomplish it. The question of how you would do notification is left open in that second version, because essentially when it's 2 inches or more, it would be an emergency. Yes, we can use all kinds of robocalls. North Hudson does it. It would cost us a few $100s each time. I mean, it costs on the order of a few pennies, and we have, more households than they have. But it wouldn't be hugely expensive. On the other hand, I don't think you'd have to obligate yourself that you would let everyone know every time with a phone call just because it snowed. There are lots of communities that do this without that. If it was good enough to put up a sign at the entrance to the community to say, look, don't park, it's odd even parking during the winter, why couldn't we put up something that said, hey, whenever it snows 2 inches, don't park? I mean, it would be the same level of notice. I mean, you're leaving it up to the people to learn where to park and when.
I agree.
Well, so my idea here tonight was that, if you're ready to make a decision on this, there you go. And if you're not, maybe it can be sent back to committee. I think we're at the point we're ready for a motion. If you want to adopt something tonight and it hasn't had a first reading, this will take an ordinance change. Your first thing would be to make a motion.
Can I ask one question about the second version? The exemptions under point I, are they not the same exemptions that were in the other ordinance?
No, they're not. Under the version that Mayor wrote up? Yeah, I have a problem with that. That's part of the ones I have a problem with, is that I don't think we should exempt streets that have no parking on one side of the street. You're never gonna get the other side of the street cleared. Tough luck if you live on a street with no parking on the other side of the street. I also think the same thing for my own street. If I don't have odd on the other side of the street, guess I'm not parking on the street that day. You know what? We have driveways and we have garages where we can park in when it snows in those areas. And I think that's something we all agree upon with that, so.
Well, I'll disagree with you on that, because I think that actually what's been happening has been in place for a number of years and it hasn't worked all that badly. So the idea that, hey, if we don't do this something new, essentially on those streets you wouldn't be making any change to the current policy. And there are plenty of streets where this hasn't really been a problem. Our old system has worked reasonably well for many, many streets.
Well,
Why are we trying to change it, I guess?
it may be helpful to revisit the reason why we're doing this in the first place, which is to make way for emergency vehicles and for city equipment. No? Yes? I think so. And so we are spending an awful lot of time talking about how human behavior fits into this, and I think what we need to maybe remind ourselves is that we need to be obnoxious, because this is going to be obnoxious to people no matter what you do, because we're putting the machinery over the people for a day, because that fire truck's got to get through, or that EMS vehicle's got to get through. So if it inconveniences you to have to move your car, we're sorry, but you're going to have to move your car, because you may then be the next person that needs that fire truck. And people are just going to have to recognize that, and we can't, I think it's counterproductive to keep carving out exemptions and different rules, and I think the simplest thing to do is to say, look, when it snows, we're gonna plow. Don't be on the street, please.
Yes, I agree with you.
So do I.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, that's what I just went through talking about. When it's gonna snow, and we'll tell you when it's gonna snow, in case you aren't watching television or anything else, we'll call you and tell you we're gonna plow your street. Please get your car off the street. Or tomorrow.
Can we vote on the ordinance that's before us?
Well, you've got, I think the one that came from committee.
The one that's marked first version,
Let's
1210
just,
first version.
Up or down?
Yes.
You know.
Well, if you want to
There
actually,
could be a motion for that to have a first reading, or there could be a motion to suspend the rules towards adopting the first version. Someone would need to make one of those motions in order for there to be a vote on it.
I'll make the motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules towards adoption of the first version of 12-10. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Wyland.
No.
I'll be yeses if ever.
Threw you
Yes.
off, didn't we?
Yaku.
No.
Bernard.
Yes.
O'Malley.
No.
Morissette.
No.
2 yes, 4 no. So
All right, motion fails. That was a motion to suspend the rules to adopt the first version. And I would point out that it may not have been quite ready for prime time in the sense that the final committee talks about we're going to solve this odd even day areas where house numbering is an issue, but no one incorporated that into the language of the ordinance. So we had an ordinance here to, you know, so I was going to try to do that wordsmithing too on Friday, and I didn't have the time and I didn't know quite how to do it. But there we go. Now there's a second version, Scott, and the second version actually incorporates your idea completely, I believe, that when it snows, you have odd even parking.
I'd like to move that the mayor call for a joint committee session of both public safety and public works to sit down and hammer this out together, not at different times, creating different animals that we try to resolve here at the full council, but to come to some agreement that the council can decide on.
So essentially what you'd have is a committee of the whole meeting of the common council outside of a normal common council meeting, which this is.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I mean, you can make that motion. I'll take that as a motion.
I did say
Yes,
that.
it was a motion. Is there a second
Second.
to that? There's a second. Any discussion to that idea?
Scott, I guess there's a majority here that's saying just leave it as it is and go that way. Why wouldn't we just put this issue to bed?
Fine, then would you care to make that motion?
Yeah.
Well, excuse me, we have a motion pending. No, we have a motion pending. and
We
it's-
got to vote on sending it back to committee or to a committee of the whole.
I'll rescind my motion.
All right.
I'll
So,
move to
floor
leave
is
our
open for a motion.
parking ordinance regarding snow removal as is. And
Oh,
pen,
that's not what I thought you were saying. My fault.
no, I agree with what you were saying, and pending that we notify our people. And let's get rid of this issue. I mean, let's not make it.
Well,
right now, there's nothing.
There is no
No.
requirement to move your car.
Then leave it as is, let's move on.
Yeah. Well, but the
Yeah, but they
reason
don't
We
have
didn't
to
solve
do it
anything.
we're discussing this is because we want clear paths for emergency vehicles, which the current policy doesn't, we have been told, does not allow or causes problems. That's why we're going back to talking about parking restrictions.
Randy, if what you're saying is leave it the way it is, then probably the motion is to table the whole issue. If what you're saying is you want to have odd even during snow emergencies, then we probably ought to go back and work. And I think that's what I'm hearing Scott say too. Maybe going back to committee is where it needs to go, because some version of this second version is probably where you're going. I mean, that's an odd even. It may not be perfect, because it was done in about 20 minutes, and it didn't have committee work. But maybe it should, because it seems like there's some people who want odd even during emergencies only. Is that what you want, Scott? Odd even during emergencies, when it snows?
That's for the committees or the council as a committee of the whole to decide whether we want odd even or just get your car off the street and clear the alleyways because we're coming through with the snow.
Well, I move the table it, let's go that route.
Well, then we can't, Randy, we can't talk about it again.
Well, that's a motion, we gotta vote
That's
on
what
it.
he wants, is to be done with it. A motion to table is not debatable. Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? No, there's no second, so that motion dies.
I'd like to point out that in the street servicing proposal, it's not a question of odd even, it's a question of when it snows, you get your cars off the street until your street's plowed, which makes full width availability for emergency vehicles.
Yep.
So that's, and I support Scott's suggestion of a committee of the whole discussion.
I'll reinstate my motion for the committee of the whole.
Second.
Because we're gonna have to iron
There's
this
a
out.
motion and a second to send this to a committee of the whole. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
All right, was it 4-2? Raise your hands if you're voting yes on that. Is that a yes?
Nope.
Your pen was moving.
Oh, sorry.
All right, hand if you're voting no.
You predicted this, didn't you? So yes was
No way
approval,
will this
Wyland.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Well, and considering we've got an attorney here on the clock tonight, if it wasn't for that, I would have preferred that we finish up tonight, but two attorneys on the clock, I should say. I think I'll vote yes, send it to the committee. All right. Now, number C, consider seeking engineering proposals and refer to Public Works Committee to develop an RFP document and advertisement. I alluded to this earlier. Our procurement policy says that service contracts can maybe exempted from bidding, but periodically we'll review them. That's what I'm suggesting, is that we send that to Public Works and have them develop some criteria for what they would do. Any discussion? There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on that?
I do have some samples, and I think Dean does as well.
Yes.
Good.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passes. I have two communications. One is that we have a vacancy on the library board created by Mike Hibschers. Unfortunately, he's done quite a good job on the library board. He was just recently reappointed, but due to his job, he's been commuting a long commute, and they've decided to move. And so he's resigned. So we have a vacancy there, and I'd like to take suggestions from the council or from the community, or people who are interested may contact me, and I'll be considering who to appoint for that. The vacancy would be to fill the remainder of that term through May of, says 2010, but that's not right. It was 3 years, must be 2012. I think it's at least 2012. I'll have to look. We got a typo here, though. The second thing is that each year we order this municipal fax book, and it's on file for you to look at. It's an interesting book that is put out by the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance, and it does comparisons between all the municipalities in the state and groups them according to population. It's the place where you can learn interesting facts such as this. The shared revenue for River Falls on a per capita basis is $154. For Baldwin, $100. For New Richmond, $93. For North Hudson, $32. And for Hudson, it's only $18. Shared revenue, $18 per capita. And when this year's version came, look who's on the front cover, our own Hall. We are one of the lowest tax cities in the state, and I think maybe that's why we're on there. I don't know, can't be certain of that. Are there any communications or items for future agendas from any elder person? City attorney?
No.
City administrator? Then we might be ready to go into closed session pursuant to 1985 1G of Wisconsin statutes to confer with legal counsel who's rendering oral or written advice regarding strategy to be adopted by the body regarding litigation in which the city of Hudson is involved, i.e. Lifeline doing business as LifeQuest versus the city of Hudson, and Sharon Horn Elstrom LLC versus city of Hudson. Is there a motion to that effect?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Wyland?
Yes.
Morissette?
Yes.
Bernard?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Yakub?
Yes.
Virgil?
Yes.
All right, motion passed. We'll take a brief recess and be in closed session.